Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
You do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. Obviously, the big news in the last day or so has been this ceasefire deal in the Middle East, where hopefully this means some hostages being freed. Hopefully this means a break from all the death and destruction. And one of the things that I take as a very good sign of this deal is the fact that supporters of both President Biden and President Trump are eager to give their guy credit for making this happen. And that tells me that, okay, maybe it's actually a pretty good deal if that's the case. Someone who follows the goings-on in Israel very closely is Shaiel Ben-Ephraim. He is a freelance writer and editor and the host of Israel Explained and a genuine Israel expert. Shaiel, thank you so much for joining me on the radio. Appreciate it.
Sure, always a pleasure.
So give us the broad strokes here. Well, actually, let me back up even more from that. You know, we have a lot of folks in this audience that are consider themselves very, very big defenders of Israel. And then we have others that consider themselves a little bit more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause than the Israeli cause. And I try to bring on guests that can speak to both sides. And whenever someone disagrees with some analysis a guest says, I'm always deluged with email and social media criticism saying, I can't believe you had that person on. They're rabid XYZ. Just so the audience can kind of guard themselves against you and any biases you might have. Where do you come down overall in your analysis of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, so I'm Israeli, and I served in the IDF, so, you can't accuse me of being anti-Israel or anything like that. But I'm pretty liberal on the Israeli spectrum, so I would consider myself a liberal Zionist. I'm for a two-state solution. I believe that Israel's gone too far in killing civilians, but also that Israel has a right to defend itself. So I'm about as moderate as Zionists come, but I'm still a Zionist and I'm still pro-Israel.
Gotcha. Did you grow up in Israel?
I did. I grew up in Jerusalem. My parents are American, so I inherited the accent, but I grew up in Israel.
You still have family there?
Yeah, plenty. I have family in Israel, family in the United States.
Wonderful. That's great. And hopefully everybody is healthy and doing well. Give us the key bullet points about what this ceasefire deal entails.
Yeah, so we're talking about a three-stage ceasefire, and that's important to remember. all we've worked out so far is stage 1, but stage 2 is guaranteed in terms of the fact that it's protected, that they have to reach it during stage 1. So what is stage 1? In stage 1, 33 hostages, Israeli hostages, will be released, including all the women, children, the elderly, and the sick. So that's why some people are calling it a humanitarian exchange. In return, Israel is going to release 30 prisoners, Palestinian prisoners, for every hostage who's a civilian, 50 for those who are soldiers. There are some female soldiers who are going to be released in this exchange, 5 of them. And in exchange for some dead bodies, unfortunately, among those 33 hostages, there are going to be dead bodies. We don't know how many. Israel is going to release all of the prisoners that are under the age of 19 or are women, and everyone that was arrested after October 8th that is not dangerous. Israel will also allow in a lot of humanitarian aid, over 600 trucks a day, and will begin to withdraw from key points in Gaza, but not all of Gaza. In the second phase, the rest of the hostages will be released. So we're talking about 65 hostages in the second phase. And Israel will finish withdrawing altogether from Gaza. The IDF will be gone from all points, including the Philadelphia crossing and the Rafah crossing. And then in the third stage, which will be negotiated during the second stage, I know this is getting a little bit complicated, that is when Gaza will be rebuilt by Qatar, Egypt, the UAE, the United States, EU, so on and so forth. And there will be some discussion of what kind of government will run Gaza after the war.
Well, that is quite helpful in understanding all that went into this. One of the things that was reported is that this was materially similar to a previous ceasefire deal that was on the table that ultimately fell apart. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's almost identical. There was a deal that was negotiated between May and August that Israel and Hamas almost pulled the trigger on. There's been a lot of recriminations over whose fault it is, but that it didn't happen. But it did fall apart. The main sticking point was the idea of whether Israel should withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor or not, where Israel ended up, and that's the border between Egypt and Gaza, where Israel refused to withdraw. After that, a few hostages were killed. 6 hostages were killed in a very unfortunate incident. A few others have been killed since. And a lot of Palestinians have died in the interim. And now we're back to more or less the same deal. Now, it's not identical 100%, because there were some details that weren't ironed out last time. But what was ironed out has become the basis for this agreement. And that has led to a lot of frustration in Israel from the right and the left, because the left are saying, why did more people have to die? Why did more hostages have to die? Why couldn't we have finished this earlier? And the right are saying that Israel didn't achieve anything militarily over those few months. So the truth is, no one is very happy with Netanyahu and the government in Israel right now. They want the hostages back, don't get me wrong. But people think, like you said, they could have had this deal months ago. So why did it go on? But that's how wars are.
So one of the things we've heard from President Biden, he seemed very pleased with this ceasefire deal and also very eager to take credit. He was the president yesterday.
The elements of this deal were what I laid out in detail this past May, which was embraced by countries around the world and endorsed overwhelmingly by the UN Security Council. The deal is structured in 3 phases. Phase 1 will last 6 weeks. It includes a full and complete ceasefire, withdrawal of Israeli forces from all the populated areas of Gaza, and the release of a number of hostages held by Hamas, including women and elderly and the wounded. And I'm proud to say Americans will be part of that hostage release in Phase 1 as well. And the Vice President and I cannot wait to welcome them home. In exchange, Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. And during phase one, the Palestinians can also return to their neighborhoods in all the areas of Gaza. And the surge of humanitarian assistance into Gaza will begin.
President Trump put out a statement saying essentially that it's his election and the fact that he's coming into office that is the reason this agreement is happening. Obviously, I don't want to over trivialize this, but since there is so much conflict on who should be getting the credit on this, objectively, is this something where one man or the other deserves the credit? Is this one where they share credit, or is there something else entirely? Because we're going to be hearing a lot about this credit-taking game going forward.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to be as fair as possible. Caveat, I am a Democrat, so maybe I'm not the most objective. Sure. But the way I look at it, they really both deserve credit. And I'll tell you why. Biden put in all the hard work for months and months, shaping this, getting the sides to the table and all that. And Trump put down that ultimatum with his kind of hardline, businessman way of getting things done that forced the sides to actually reach the deal at a certain date. So I think the best metaphor is a football one. Imagine you had a series of great passing plays, and that you got bogged down in the red zone, and then your running back is the one who powered it in with a couple of hard running plays at the very end. So sure, it's the running back who actually scored the touchdown, but the quarterback did all those passing plays to advance you, 70, 80 yards or whatever. Biden advanced many more yards. But without Trump, I'm not sure we would have gotten a touchdown. So you really have to share the credit between the two of them. And let's look at this on the most positive side we can, as a beautiful moment of American bipartisanship, something that's very rare. I've been following very closely how these negotiations have gone. And the truth is, the Biden administration and Trump's team worked together very well because they shared an interest in getting this done. Mm-hmm. And if only they could work that well on everything else, the country would be in much better shape.
Oh, yeah.
So this was a triumph for everyone.
Absolutely.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
At this point, Shaiel, when will, at 30 minutes after the hour, this is the other side of midnight, a little bit late, so technically at 35 minutes after the hour, this is the other side of midnight. When will the hostages be released?
Yeah, so it's a staggered release. The first release comes on Sunday. On Sunday, we're going to get 3 hostages. I've heard different reports of who it's going to be, but it's going to be 3 female hostages. After that, there's going to be 3-4 hostages released every few days until the final hostages for the first step will be released on the 42nd day of the deal, which is the very end of February. So every few days, there's going to be groups of 3-4 hostages released, starting Sunday and continuing until the end of February. Then phase 2, we don't even know 100% if phase 2 is going to happen, and we certainly don't know what the release schedule for that is going to be. Oh, another thing. There's going to be, like I said, live people and dead bodies, unfortunately, coming. According to what's been agreed so far, Hamas is going to release the live people first and the dead bodies at the end.
There are some people that I heard from earlier that are not happy about this because they're fearful that some of the people being released by Israel may go and take arms against Israel in the future. Is that a realistic fear?
Yeah, it's a very realistic fear. Look, I'm a supporter of this deal, but I have some serious concerns, like every other Israeli, about this deal. We all remember what happened last time. What do I mean by last time? Last time we had a deal. It was a deal for a soldier called Gilad Shalit. When Shalit was released, Israel released 1,000 prisoners. One of those prisoners was called Yehya Sinwar. And as we know, Sinwar was the leader of Hamas who planned October 7th. And he was the most, notable, but not the only one who had incredible influence and killed a lot of Israelis. So this is a major concern. Israel is trying to get them to send these prisoners to Gaza instead of to the West Bank so that they're sort of holed up there. But of course, Sinwar was in Gaza too. So that is a real concern. Last time it was 1,000 prisoners for one Israeli soldier. This time we're talking about 1,300 prisoners for a whole bunch of hostages. But the concerns are real, and that is the real downside from an Israeli perspective of this deal. But there was no other way to get the hostages out.
What happens if either side goes back on their agreement to not engage in a ceasefire? What if Hamas starts attacking Israel again, or Israel starts going after Hamas again?
Yeah, so that is a very good question. We don't have any clear consequences for violations. What we do have is two mechanisms that could stop this to some extent. Mechanism number one is that the Israeli withdrawal is dependent on the release of the hostages, and the release of hostages is dependent on the withdrawal. So you have a sort of, Mexican standoff, so to speak, where both sides want something and they need the other one to complete it in order to get what they want. So that mechanism is the main mechanism, keeping both sides honest, just their interest. But there is another mechanism. The other mechanism is that you have three guarantors of the treaty or of the agreement. You have Qatar, you have Egypt, and you have the United States. Now, those are three very important actors because Qatar is the main patron of Hamas, along with Iran, and the United States is the main patron of Israel. Having Egypt on there is useful as well. Egypt has strong ties with both. So they would theoretically punish their patron. They would punish their proxy if they violate the terms. And what that means in simple English is that Trump would punish Israel, Qatar would punish Hamas. So those are the two mechanisms. Having said that, both sides could break the ceasefire. From my experience, I've seen a lot of these wars and ceasefires. Once these are agreed, they're usually kept, more or less. Now, this isn't what you would consider keeping if you had a contract in the United States, because both sides violate it in many ways, but they violate it in such a way that it continues to move along, if that makes sense. You have a little attack here, you have a little attack there, but nothing that skews the whole thing. That's probably what we'll see this time.
If you're just tuning in, this is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. We're talking with Shaiel Ben-Ephraim. He is a freelance writer and editor and the host of the Israel Explained podcast, which you can check out on YouTube and in a number of other places where there are podcasts. Where do you see the peace process going from here? Let's say the ceasefire does hold. Are we going to be able to see a permanent end to the war?
Yeah, so there is no peace process per se anymore. A peace process is an actual attempt to resolve the deep issues between Israel and Palestine, to whether it's borders, whether it's refugees, independent state. There's really been none of that for a very, very long time. There is a chance that this ceasefire will be used to relaunch that peace process. And that would, again, depend completely on Donald Trump. Trump has quite a bit of influence over Netanyahu, quite a bit of leverage over Israel. He has a tremendous amount of political capital right now. And if he wanted to use that in order to pressure Israel into negotiating, he probably could do so. I don't know how successful the negotiating would be, but he could do so. There is a partner. They're weak. The Palestinian Authority, that's the other Palestinian government that sits in Ramallah, not Hamas. Hamas is not a partner for negotiations. Hamas wants to destroy Israel. Israel doesn't recognize Hamas. So Israel could talk to the Palestinian Authority, and that would be the beginning of a peace process. Netanyahu has very little interest in doing that. He would have to be coerced into doing that. Trump does have one reason to do that, which is Trump is interested in getting a normalization agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has said that the only way that they will normalize with Israel is if Israel has some kind of path towards Palestinian statehood. And so that could be why Trump would want Israel to move towards a peace process. That way he could get that achievement, get a stronger anti-Iranian access, also get an achievement that Biden couldn't get, to sort of stick it to Biden, which is the kind of thing that appeals to Trump. So I could see that happening. But my guess is that Trump will be too busy pursuing his domestic agenda to do that. But you never know with Trump.
How similar or different are the left and right wing in Israel as compared to the left and right wing in the United States?
Well, they used to be quite different. They used to be that the left and the right in Israel was not socioeconomic, but was purely about security. But, nowadays with social media, there's a sort of globalized political agenda. And the right wing in Israel increasingly sounds like MAGA in the United States. And the left wing in Israel, maybe to a slightly lesser extent, but also sounds a little bit like liberals in the United States. So a lot of these culture war things that you hear in the U.S. came to Israel. It took a few years, but it got there. Things like people talk about fake news, and people talk about, the trans agenda, and people talk about the deep state. All those things have reached Israel, a few years after they were in the United States. And we're seeing that all around the world. The political lines are depressingly similar in Europe, Canada, the United States, South America, and Israel is no different. Some of the issues are different. There's the peace process, and there's Arabs living there, but a lot of the concepts coming in are similar. If you're an American living in Israel, it wouldn't take you too long nowadays to be able to figure out what's what. There are some issues that are completely separate, like we have Haredi, ultra-Orthodox people in Israel. Their social role, do they serve in the military, do they not serve in the military? That's uniquely Israeli. But a lot of the other stuff is pretty similar nowadays.
Lastly, and I appreciate the thorough explanation on this. I really have enjoyed the conversation already, and I hope you'll come back. Just to go back to the hostages, will the family members of the hostages have advance notice of who's alive and who is not? Like if a family member's loved one has died in captivity, is that family member going to know that before a dead body comes home, or could they be thinking that their loved one is still alive?
That is a difficult question to answer, but the short answer is yes, they're supposed to know. On the 16th day of the ceasefire, Hamas is supposed to provide Israel with a list of who's alive and who's dead. Now, the reason I say it's difficult to know is because Hamas have said that they would produce this list before, not once, but on several occasions, and have not produced the list. I think one of the reasons, there's probably two reasons for that. One reason is psychological torture against the families, which is something that Hamas has done. For example, they've called, the numbers of parents to taunt them and things like that. But the other reason is because they may not know where everyone is and are trying to figure it out. But either way, it's something they really don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure they're going to actually produce that list on the 16th for those two reasons. And so it could be that they're not going to and people won't know. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they do that. And I think that they could get away with it because Israel wants the hostages back so badly. They're not going to break it over that. So, yes, on the 16th, everyone's supposed to know, but I have serious doubts.
I can't thank you enough for this conversation. I feel like I understand this ceasefire agreement a great deal more, and I do hope you'll help us chronicle this as all these steps play out and as we move forward.
Yeah, anytime you want. Happy to help.
Shaiel Ben-Ephraim, you could check him out on the Israel Explained podcast. Thank you very much. If you want to comment on any portion of our discussion, you can give me a call, 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a Real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a Real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your Real ID at tsa.gov/Real ID. That's tsa.gov/Real ID, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff.